Every day, thousands of hackers try to steal your crypto. But Arculus uses air-gapped technology by forming a protective barrier that insulates you from hackers and secures your crypto. Order yours at getarculus.com.
Hey guys, with sports betting season in full force with football here, you need a sports book with integrity and longevity like BetUS. You may already know this, but BetUS has been pioneers in the sportsbook industry for almost 3 decades, thriving and paying their loyal customer base. That is BETUS.com, and they have loads of bonuses. Join now or call 1-800-69-BET-US. That is 800-MY-BET-US. You receive 125% sign-up bonus by using bonus code SST125. That's SST125. They have re-up and referral bonuses. Also, BetUS is known among America's favorite sportsbook for lots of reasons. Bet on team and player props, loads of NFL futures, UFC matches, PGA golf, live betting on most sports. The online casino has hundreds of games. The racebooks has all the horse tracks. They have every bet type imaginable. Follow my lead and get your phone, online, and sports betting partner with integrity and longevity like I did. BetUS. You bet. You win. You get paid. BetUS. Well. Welcome in, everybody. It is Monday, October 11th, and this is Scout's Eye on College Football, a national look around the world of college football, the weekly look, and boy, do we have a lot to get to today. Gosh, excuse me. I am choked up. I've got so much. I need to get some water to get ready for this show. What a show we have for you today. What a weekend when you have massive upsets, when you have a spectacular weekend of college football. Games that are finishing at a spirited conclusion where you don't know what's going to happen. Major shakeup. We seem to have this. We seem to have it often in college football. We had it again on Saturday, and a lot of ramifications with regards to it. We're going to get to a bunch. We're going to get to an anatomy of this upset of Texas A&M beating Alabama. We're going to talk about kind of where things are. Where does that put Georgia in their win over Auburn? Some classic-looking games, offensively anyway, in the Red River Shootout in Oklahoma, Texas, and Ole Miss, Arkansas, and the performance by Iowa, flipping Penn State over with turnovers again. Penn State seemingly in control. We're going to get to that. The new look rankings for this week. And what do they really mean? And what does it mean going forward? A lot to get to today. So we remind you that we are live on Twitch TV. If you are listening to this show in the podcast form, we'd really appreciate you signing up for the Landry Football Podcast channel. Very simple. Go to LandryFootball.com and click on Follow Chris on Twitch. And you can watch the show live as we do it. And join us in the chat room. Bring your comments, bring your questions, bring your thoughts. We'd love to get to them here, as we often like to integrate them into the show. We have got SEC football and beyond, top of the hour. I'm going to be doing that solo. Dan Matthews normally kind of produces the show for us and sets us up. He is involved with baseball duties today. But we're going to get into a lot of reminder that we are working on the breakdowns from the week that was. So we've got game balls to hand out in college and in the NFL. We've got all the breakdowns of the games by conference. We got it all for you over at LandryFootball.com. So where do we go? Where do we start? I think we start at the top, or at least we start at the top as it was at the beginning of last week. And I would say that certainly the Alabama upset by Texas A&M ought to teach us something. What should it teach us? It teaches that it matters that you're the best team, but it matters that you're the best team if you perform the best in the game. It does not correlate to when you don't play your best, when you make mistakes, and you're, quite frankly, outplayed by somebody that is outperforming you, that have playing with a greater sense of aggression and a greater sense of focus, it could cost you. This is not about, though, just what Alabama didn't do. That's what fan bases do. It's what my team didn't do. And not enough about what the other team did do. I thought it was a great game plan by Texas A&M. And again, a lot of folks, I say it all the time, you never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. People look at a static look at players and teams and coaches. Well, this is, what a team is. They're not good enough, and they weren't good enough there, and that's that. Well, that's not that. That's the way it was. That's not the way it's going to be. And, there's a lot of criticism to Jimbo Fisher and how the team looked in the early part of the season. Not very good. But there's also the overreaction. And I get it. We react to the moment. What happened yesterday doesn't matter. What happens tomorrow doesn't matter because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But we want to have the snap judgments. And I don't think that enough people understand that, at least from a football perspective. As you study the game and look at the game, you're looking at it from how do you get better and how do you make changes. And sometimes it puts you in a different position. And I think in A&M's case, there was no expectations by anybody. I thought they were, I don't want to say throw caution to the wind. I thought they were very, very aggressive with their approach. And it worked. And they basically got Alabama out of sorts from the jump. And they deserve a lot of credit for it. First thing, I thought defensively, Texas A&M did a tremendous job with their blitz pressures, disguising it, changing the launch points with some overload blitzes, some delayed blitzes, some second, third level blitzes. Alabama was never comfortable where it was coming from because it was constantly changing. So when people will say, well, Alabama never adjusted, that's the old let's catchphrase. Oh, the coaches never adjusted. They adjusted the entire game. They just adjusted to what they saw, and A&M adjusted. And then again and again and again. So they were constantly changing. A tremendous job there. They were breaking down Bama's protections the entire game. I thought they really struggled with the overload pressure the most, and I thought that was a big, big problem. I also thought that Elko did a good job taking away the hot read effectively. I thought Bama was able to run the football effectively at times, but I thought they got away from it too much. Bama just had too many penalties, too many turnovers. They had dropped balls. And this only fueled A&M's aggression, momentum, confidence. Look, I think that offensively, they had a really good game plan. Jimbo Fisher and his staff were highly aggressive with their attack. Aggressive, not throwing it downfield, but with the run game. I thought they really did a good job mixing up their run blocking, their protections. They did a good job with the down blocks. I thought they tried some things that were maybe a little bit more comfortable with, and it worked, and it was successful. And I thought it took on a constant adjustment period for Alabama in the first half, in which every time they adjusted, I thought Jimbo had the answer, and then Alabama was able to fix it at halftime. And Alabama dominated the game in the second half. Alabama had more points than A&M had yards in the second half. And it looked to me like Alabama was going to win the game. But give A&M the credit. The gutsy performance. They got off the mat. They finished strong. They did a really tremendous job of being able to put aside some negative plays that they had, some issues that they had in the second half being controlled, and were able to come up big. You know, this Alabama team, that's the storyline is, you know, even I said, look, this looks like Alabama and Georgia, clearly the best teams in the country. Well, not on Saturday night. And so now the narrative is, well, things are dead, things are over. On Saturday night, they did not play like it. And so on Saturday night, they got beat. Now, what does this mean going forward for Alabama? We shall see. Let's take A&M first. What does it mean going forward to them? Oh, they figured it out. Now they've got it. It's the springboard. Folks, all that Harry High School nonsense. We're back. You know, it's going to be the springboard. There's no such thing, okay? It's an example of what you can do, how you're able to attack. But next week, it's going to be a different challenge. And the things that worked last week are not going to necessarily work in the upcoming week. And they're going to require different circumstances, different things to be accomplished to be successful. And so that's the challenge of coaching. That's the challenge of trying to figure it out and trying to constantly stay ahead of the game. It's the difference between, you know, hey, being really good and being dominant looking and then executing that. I think A&M has a chance to be successful the rest of the year and build off of it. But as they did last year. I think what you saw is in the early part of the season, them trying to figure some things out. The quarterback. Oh, Zach Calzada, he's better. Well, of course, he's a young quarterback. I am shocked that he played as well as he did Saturday night because I thought he would take several more starts, several more reps, several more practices before he was playing at that type of a level. You know, very, very impressed. Now, does he continue to get better? You would think, you would hope. And I think those are things that you got to look at and try to figure out. As you get better and better, you never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. And so one of the things that I think we have to look at is the great job that A&M did of preparing their team. And remember, you know, the whole Jimbo Fisher can't coach and he's making, you know, all this money. And what happened? This guy was the village idiot a week ago against Mississippi State. Now he's, you know, worth every penny. Well, none are true. Neither one are true. Okay, none of it is about what your worth is. You're worth what somebody's willing to pay and what the market will dictate. And that means who's someone else might be able to pay you. No one has this game figured out. No one. You constantly evolve. You constantly grow. You constantly try to get better. And what you did last week can be a building point towards next week. But it is going to require some of the things, but in some ways, the ability to adjust and mature and grow. And I think that A&M did a really good job. But what does it mean going forward? Don't know. Don't know. For Alabama, what does it mean for this team going forward? Look, I think this team still has everything in front of it. If I were to look at their schedule, would I think that anybody's going to beat them? No. But I didn't think A&M would beat them. So, you know, what the hell? Anything can happen. We've established that. But do I think anybody will beat them? I don't think State will. I think Tennessee will run their offense more than them next hour. LSU, no. New Mexico. Arkansas, certainly good. Auburn. I think Alabama runs the table and wins the West. And then we'll see what they do against Georgia. How much better do they get between now and then? I do think this. I'm not seeing a lot of depth being developed on the offensive and defensive line. No disrespect, but boy, is Chris Owens struggling at right tackle. They don't have those answers there. Why? Well, they're young, they're talented, they've got 5 stars. Look, you don't know. You're coaching it or allowing it to happen. It still comes to coaching, but are the guys picking it up? Why are they not picking it up? Is it an attitude problem? Do they have the leaders that they've had there before? All those things are fair questions and has a lot to do with how players take ownership of a team and how good they can go and how ready they can be for a game. This is an opportunity now to where you can certainly sell from a coaching standpoint. You see, if you don't take care of business, this is what can happen. This is what happened. You got embarrassed on the road. Now what are you going to do about it? When you do that as a coach and you won, sometimes it goes one ear out the other. So we shall see as things go forward, and the answer is don't know. I look at A&M and I think their chances are pretty good to finish out the season fairly strong. I do think that Missouri and South Carolina are very bad defenses. I think they got a good chance against Auburn. Ole Miss is a challenge. LSU, Purview, and LSU. Look, I think we could be talking about a 10-2 team. Is that a disappointment? I mean, I thought 9-3, 10-2 is kind of where A&M was. That's where they're going to end up. I certainly did not expect them to lose to Mississippi State, but I didn't expect them to beat Alabama. So there you go. I didn't expect them to lose to Arkansas either. So that's kind of where they are for Alabama. I think this team is still one of the 4 best. I think they have a chance to play that way. Georgia looks unbeatable right now. Well, they're unbeatable because they've had no real blip on any of their games. They look dominant defensively, regardless who they play. They've got a great chance to continue to finish and run the table. We'll see. They can't have one of these games like Alabama had. So it was an impressive performance by Georgia against an Auburn team that's, not bad by any stretch defensively. We're going to take a look at it a little bit later before we wrap up the show. But I will say this, that this is Kentucky's going to have a hard time matching up. I know that was a really good performance by Kentucky. We're going to get into that next week. And Kentucky's performance and LSU's issues and where LSU's headed right now as a program and as a team next hour. But what a game it was. What a 11 a.m. Central. What a stretch we had, didn't we? You had Oklahoma at Texas in the Red River Shootout in Dallas. That was going back and forth. And in a way that was unusual. A dominant performance by Texas, taking control of the game, seemingly going to run Oklahoma out of it, only to have a tough-minded Oklahoma team on the backs of Caleb Williams leading them back. It was a devastating loss for Texas, a tremendous comeback win for Oklahoma. And what did we learn? Well, we learned a little bit about the mettle of Oklahoma. We see the potential of Texas, but also we see being able to finish. You had that game going on. At the same time, Arkansas Ole Miss was going on, where there was very little defense being played. The tempos of the offenses. The great pace and design, the RPOs, the zone reads, that was so very effective by both offenses, Ole Miss and Arkansas. Really, really good performances offensively. To take that game and make it a great game, one of the best games. I've heard people say that was the best game that they've seen in their life. And I've heard the same people say the Oklahoma-Texas game was the best game they've ever seen. Literally say that. Those games are going on simultaneously. How great was that? How great is college football to have that at the same time in the modern day? So that was kind of the storyline of the week, is to have those classic games. Then they lead into a game in Iowa City, in Penn State and Iowa, that was intriguing for a number of reasons, because it was going to really tell us a lot about the Big Ten. And I thought that Penn State may have some trouble turning the football over against Iowa. But because everybody does, I thought that would be a factor. Penn State was controlling this game. I mean, they looked like the better team. They had more explosiveness. Both are good defensively, as I said in the breakdown prior to the game. But, it was about, to me, it was about Penn State kind of taking control, more explosiveness, and then Sean Clifford goes out. And that was all she wrote. It was it. It was never a real doubt at that point, in my mind, watching it, who was going to win the game. It was always Penn State had a shot. They were never out of it mathematically, but they were never really in it from an offensive standpoint, functionality standpoint. A couple of things about it. I want to get into kind of what did this really mean. For, Penn State, it's the difficulty, because I'm going to tell you now, not only is Penn State leading the game and controlling the game, and they lose it with the injury to Sean Clifford, it looks like, and we'll see how they're able to craft a game plan without Sean Clifford, but it looks like Penn State is pretty much out of it. Looks like they got no answers on offense. Didn't have it Saturday. Again, with a week of game plan, we'll see. The reality is, and it's tough to do it today with the transfer portal, you better have a backup quarterback that can come in, and you need to be able to win with a backup quarterback. He may not be as good. He may be just as talented, and he may be just as good as the frontline guy down the road, but he better be functional. You better be able to run an offense. You better not be two hands tied behind your back, or your season's over. Look, I mean, we saw it with A&M, and I get it, as Hankins goes down. They were able to get through against Colorado. They get through New Mexico. They had growing pains with Zach and the offensive line. That combination was tough. Yet, look at how much better Zach Calzada has gotten. He's got talent. He's a little different than Hayes King. He may be their starting quarterback now. He may not give that job back. It may be Haynes King that comes back, doesn't stay at A&M, may transfer. I don't know what's going to happen. Time will tell, right? But that's the way you've got to do it. What's going on at Penn State to not have a quarterback ready to go? And are they going to have a quarterback ready to go the rest of the year? Because that's almost coaching malpractice to not have it. So how do you do it? It is tough when quarterbacks are going to move on to greener pastures if they don't win the starting job. You better be able to sell in recruiting, in roster development, roster management, that you're going to have to stagger your classes. You're going to have kids that come in that can understand that their time is coming, that you will get them some work. I think those things are important. I believe that there's mistakes made oftentimes in games when you've got a lead to not let your backup quarterback get some reps and get some work, because they may be your starting quarterback next week for all you know, because it may be week one, first quarter of the next week, and that guy may be your starter. That was certainly huge. BYU goes down. Michigan survives Nebraska. Michigan still not overly impressive. Boy, I can't wait until a couple of weeks to see Michigan State, which is going to be, there's the looks now of 2 unbeatens. I didn't see that. That's going to be a lot of fun. In the second wave, while Georgia was taking care of Auburn and Penn State, Iowa was going on, and BYU was losing, we also had a great game going. I don't know how many people saw it, but Virginia-Louisville was a great game. Back and forth and back. Lots of offense. And Wake Forest goes unbeaten, stays unbeaten, rather, against Syracuse. Struggled. Like, I got to tell you, love the story of Wake Forest. Love what Dave Clawson has done. You look at the back end of their schedule. I think they'll probably lose 2 of their last 3 games. We'll see. They've got Army coming up. That's going to be a challenge. Then Duke and North Carolina. We know North Carolina is a mess. By the way, the North Carolina game is a non-conference game because of the scheduling issues. I won't get on that. But at the end, NC State, Clemson, and BC, 2 of them on the road, NC State at home. I think they lose 2 of those last 3. So we'll see where we're headed towards the ACC and who's going to win that thing. And I know it's like, who cares? Because they're completely out of the playoff race at this point. And no, Wake's not going to do anything.
Every day, thousands of hackers try to steal your crypto. But Arculus uses air-gapped technology by forming a protective barrier that insulates you from hackers and secures your crypto. Order yours at getarculus.com.
You know, Pitt, West Virginia, you know, it is a really muddy situation with nobody stepping up. But that's what was going on in that second window. Then we get into the third wave of games. And we had the upset of Alabama A&M, which we discussed. We had Michigan holding on against Nebraska. We had Notre Dame, Virginia Tech in what was a great game, back and forth. Utah dominating USC. TCU jumping out ahead of Texas Tech and holding on. And then we had the bloodletting of Kentucky just opening up the wounds, pouring salt in the wounds of LSU, absolutely crushing LSU. A dominant performance, not a surprise in any way, but a dominant performance. And I want to start with Kentucky because I think this Kentucky team it's a great story. They're a really good team. What I am saying about Kentucky is not that they're not good. On the contrary, I think they're better than they're playing. I think they're really salty on defense. I think they're really physical. They bring a load. And I think they play well up front offensively. But I think they make too many mistakes. The last 2 weeks in the upset of Florida and the domination of LSU, not nearly as many. And I see a little bit more continuity with that offense. I didn't think they probably finished as well as they liked it. Now, what does this really mean? Well, they're 6-0. So what do you complain about, Landry? I'm not complaining. I'm just making observations from inside the film room that I think there's even better Kentucky than what we've seen thus far. I'll say it right now. I don't give them a chance against Georgia. I think Georgia's appreciably better. You didn't give A&M a chance against Alabama last week either. You're correct. Anything can happen. Am I going to be completely shocked? I am not. I am beyond the stage where I get shocked on anything. But I just don't see the matchup being nearly as good. Mississippi State may give them a little bit more of a different look and a different challenge schematically. Tennessee's pace, Vanderbilt, New Mexico State, Louisville, no chance. We're looking at a team in Kentucky that is probable 10-2. Very possible 11-1. Maybe somewhere like the Sugar Bowl or playing a big-time bowl game. That's getting it done big time. a great job. Now, from an LSU standpoint, they care less about what's going on there and what's going on in Baton Rouge. And what's going on is, I've said, since after the UCLA game, this was the process of a change has been put in place. And that was the case. Just the buyout money and those things have been put in place in anticipation, as quite frankly, they always need to be if you have to buy out. If you're going to have a coach under a contract that's going to pay him a lot of money, and by the way, people are throwing out figures, and they're different figures, because people are throwing out figures about what Ed Orgeron would be owed if they paid him today. Remember, that goes down every week, because if he's fired by the end of the year, it's like a little over 16. Closer to, between 16 and 7, 16.4, 16.6 and change. So firing at the end of the year. Firing him now, you still owe him the money. So what you owe him after you fire him, it just depends on the date that you fire him. Makes a lot of money. So the timing of it, it's a lot of money they'll have to pay. It'll probably be near 24 to buy out the staff. That has been accounted for. That's my point is, I think that's something that you account for if you're an administrator and you know that might be a possibility, which is something that Scott Woodward feared, was keenly aware that could very well be a possibility, if not a probability. After the UCLA game, it was pretty obvious where this season was likely headed. And so the wheels of motion of getting that money was already in a fast pace. There's going to be a change. The change is going to come at the end of the year, unless something embarrassing off the field, whatever, embarrassing off the field, were to make that an impossibility. Meaning something happens that would require immediate action to fire him. That's all it would be. It's as simple as that. One of the things that I have said before, Scott Woodward does not want, he's very political. He understands the landscape. He understands there will be some backlash from the national media that really doesn't understand what's going on inside this. And people may say, this guy won a national championship 2 years ago, and you're going to fire him in the middle of the season. So I think he would rather let this play out, and it will be less of a backlash, if you will, if they do it at the end of the year. Because then the record is going to be whatever it's going to be. 3-9, 4-8, 5-7. It'll be a lot different, a lot easier to do it. The search is on, the investigation is on, not the we're going to interview and do this and do that. But the process of evaluating, the process of looking at options, seeing what's the best fit and how to do it has already begun. I'm going to get into it a little bit more next hour. and we'll go from there. The matchups this week, not as sexy of a matchup. Kentucky, Georgia is going to lead the way. Oklahoma State and Texas going to be interesting. Do you know that Oklahoma State's unbeaten? They're not a overly impressive unbeaten, but they're unbeaten nonetheless. How will Texas respond after blowing that game last week? I think Ole Miss, Tennessee is going to be loads of fun. I would say 5 hours, 120 points. I don't know, something along those lines. Not out of the questions. I'm exaggerating on both of those numbers, not by a whole lot. Those are my thoughts there. I think that one of the things that I'm looking at right now in terms of the overall playoffs and the overall landscape is we know what Georgia's situation is. Now, Iowa, with their schedule, looks very good to run the table. Now, again, they're not like this great team that is can play average and win, but they've got Purdue this week. They've got a bye. Then they've got Wisconsin, which I know is not playing well. Northwestern, Minnesota's a bigger challenge than you might think. Nebraska, not. Illinois, not. And then Nebraska, they've got winnable games. They've got games that, quite frankly, teams that don't look as good as they are right now. That's their path to an unbeaten record going into the Big Ten championship game. Do I like their chances of beating Ohio State? I do not. By the way, Ohio State quietly destroyed Maryland with bereft of receiving core help. That's been their strength at Maryland. Ohio State's getting better. Need to start paying attention to them. Let's see how much better they get. They've got no margin for error. They're going to be playing a wounded Penn State. They've got a Michigan team that's good, but still Ohio State's far more talented. Let's see what they're able to do. So you've got Cincinnati that's got a schedule that's favorable, and they took care of business against Temple in a decided fashion. Oklahoma that has yet to lose and perhaps will not lose. Caleb Williams, see the starter going forward? Don't know. Certainly going to be integrated in part of that offense. I would suspect he's going to start. I would suspect that he's going to get the majority of the snaps. I do not know with certainty. I do think getting Caleb Williams has jump-started that Oklahoma offense. And so now do I really want to overreact to Alabama's performance and say they're not the second-best team or the first-best team? No, I really don't. I still think this Alabama team, other than Georgia, if I'm going to rank it, I mean, you rank it on merit and what they've done. No, I wouldn't put them to. But if I were ranking who's going to line up and win, I think only Georgia is better than Alabama. But I do think that Alabama needs to get better, or we could see Ohio State in particular or Oklahoma get better to the point where maybe they could challenge a little bit more than I think they could now. Look, Alabama lost to an A&M team that no doubt has talent, but are not great by any shakes. So let's kind of keep that in mind as it's a lesson to me and should be to anyone that a reminder every week it changes. See who gets better, who gets worse. That's the chore. That's the challenge. And I do think the one thing that maybe is missing from that Alabama team is a sense of urgency, maybe by the staff, by the players. I think that is going to be – that's done now. The sense of urgency every week has to be there. The sense of urgency or the fear of God, as some might like to call it, is in there. You don't take care of business, this is what can happen and what will happen again. That part you can put aside. That's the greatest motivation that the head coach has, needs, wants, utilizes. Now the on-the-field issues. Can they get problems on the offensive line fixed? Can they be more consistent on the defensive side? Can they run the football with more sense of urgency and patience? I think the penalties, the turnovers, the mental errors, the lack of focus, I think that'll be corrected. Where does that take Alabama? I think it takes them all the way, definitely all the way to the conference championship game. I don't know yet if that takes them to a victory over Georgia. Here's the difference. Alabama lost their chance of an assured playoff spot. Pardon me. An unbeaten Alabama goes to the playoffs whether they beat Georgia or not. Now, a one-loss Alabama that loses to Georgia in the conference championship game does not make the playoffs. Doesn't look like there's any way for that. So I think that game kind of serves as, quote unquote, a wake-up call. I hate that term. But the reality is it's just a polarizing type game that's going to really start to create an edge in a positive way, or it's going to begin to cause a lot of problems as they try to figure some of these things out. You've got new coaches and new players. There's a lot of changes there. And I think for the most part, they've done a fairly good job, but there have been evidence that it has not quite as seamless as we may have thought. So that's a look there. Hey, before I head on out, let me get to a question with Blocko Hollywood says, where would you recommend I start to get into learning about the X's and O's of football? I want to start learning before I graduate college. I'm hoping to either scout or coach. Block, you don't know where you go to college, but you need to volunteer if you can in the recruiting, in the football office some way. If you're in college, you need to go and beg your way into doing volunteer work for the coaches in the secretaries in the football office. Run the copy machine, do whatever. That's something that you would do. I would also, if you can, volunteer time at a high school, being an assistant with the coaches. I mean, it could be handling out water, bringing out pads to the field, whatever, lining the field. Learn, get around people who know it, and then you can gradually learn. It's not something, if you're at a community college, you don't have that opportunity, then I would still see if there's a high school in the area you can't volunteer and do some things for. You have to learn. You don't go and read about football in a book. You can learn things, but you got to learn how to teach. You got to learn about the game. I mean, certainly we do a lot to explain the game, but it's a different level. You can't learn it from a class. You can't learn it with a degree. There are things you can get that can help prepare you so that you can get one of those jobs. But what you need to focus on is really at high school. You really got to do that. And you learn from your coaches. You get a good feel for that, and then you use those connections that maybe your coaches can help put in a good word for you so that you can volunteer at the university that you go to. And then when you do that, then you learn and you become a sponge and you grow. But then as you're learning, you're also making contacts. It is a lot about who you know. Who you know will often get you an opportunity. What you know and what you're willing to learn will allow you to keep a job. But it is a very competitive situation, and you got to learn from the ground up. So those are some of my thoughts. A little light in the chat room. We appreciate Black Hollywood joining us there. My thoughts right now, still looking at Oklahoma and Cincinnati and Ohio State and Iowa as really good teams based upon Alabama's performance off of one game. Not all that impressed. Still respect the talent. Still respect what the potential is. But we need to see. And I'm like anybody else. I've seen that program and that head coach figure some things out. But, we need to see if this team is going to be any different or along the same line. So that's a look there. Hey, reminder, coming up in a couple of minutes, top of the hour, going to be breaking down the SEC. Hey, Joe Fan, do you think that Kentucky's run game can be enough to beat Georgia? I do not. I do not like Kentucky's chances against Georgia. I don't think they can run the football well enough against Georgia. I don't think they can protect the football well enough against Georgia. I don't like the matchup at all. I respect what Kentucky's done. This is not going up against LSU's defense. This is not going up against Florida's defense. This Georgia defense is at a different level. I think the only way Kentucky has a chance is if they play a clean game and if Georgia turns it over. And if Kentucky can get short fields, if they can, make some big plays out of the passing game, can they get Georgia misaligned a little bit with pace and tempo, which is not what Kentucky likes to do, by the way? Can they get Wan'Dale Robinson open a little bit with some run-after-catch opportunities? I think it's going to take some big plays, explosive plays in the kicking game, and then the pass game for them to open up any chance to run it. Because I don't think running against Georgia's front seven is even a real viable option. So you're going to really have to, I think, attack in the passing game and be aggressive. I think playing it close to the vest can keep it competitive for so long. But I do think this Kentucky defense can perform fairly well against Georgia's offense. I do think this Kentucky defense can get after it. I do think they can do a pretty good job leveraging the outside run, doing a pretty good job against Georgia's inside zone. I think that's going to be the key. But can they do it for 4 quarters? I don't know that they can do that. So I think in a low-scoring game where Kentucky's defense rises up and they force some Georgia offensive mistakes and create a short field for their offense, that's a chance. That's a blueprint for a potential upset by Kentucky. But lining up, running it against Georgia, I don't think that works all that well. Hey, we'll join you top of the hour for SEC football and beyond. I'll be going into more of this type of talk. So bring your questions here at the top of the hour, and we're going to get more into the LSU situation and anything you want on the Kentucky-Georgia game coming up this week. What is the issue with Alabama and some of their issues, whether A&M has figured some things out. We've got a lot to get to, and we're going to break down all the games from this past weekend in the SEC. That's on SEC football and beyond right at the top. Appreciate you joining us, everyone.
5 enter detention.
I think he's breathing. Jesus. I'm calling 911.
4 come out alive.
Heaven's dead.
They think one of us did it.
Based on the #1 New York Times bestseller, One of Us is Lying, a brand new series streaming only on Peacock.